Hey everyone, Chris here from Project Option, and in this video we're going to talk about an options theta. So it's really important that you pay attention to this video because theta is one of the more important Greeks to understand because it doesn't matter if you're buying options or selling options, you need to be aware of how option prices decay over time. So that's what we're going to talk about in this video. So what is an options theta? Well, theta is the expected decrease in an options price with the passing of a single day. Now, this is sometimes called time decay or theta decay, but all we need to know for now is that option prices decrease over time, and theta is the option Greek that estimates how much the options price will decrease by with the passing of one day. So here we have a table with a couple of examples just to demonstrate how an options theta translates to its estimated price in the future. So let's say we have a $10 option and that options theta is negative 0.25. Now, after the passing of one day, that options price is expected to be $9.75. So $10 minus the 25 cents for that one day. Now, if we go 10 days ahead, that $10 option is expected to be worth $7.50. So that comes from $10 minus 25 cents times 10 days. Now let's say we have a $2.50 option. Let's say that options theta is negative 0.05. After one day, that option is expected to be 5 cents cheaper. So $2.50 minus 5 cents gives us $2.45. So that's the estimated option price after one day. Now, based on its current theta of negative 0.05, in 10 days the options price is expected to be 50 cents lower. So 5 cents in theta times 10 days is 50 cents. So $2.50 minus 50 cents gives us $2. So by now I'm sure you've noticed that theta for every single option is negative. Now that's because option prices over time, all else being equal, will decrease. Now, why do option prices decrease over time? And the answer is most easily understood by thinking about options as insurance contracts. Now, that's a very common comparison that a lot of people make, but it's also because it's true. Option contracts are simply insurance contracts against movements in the stock price. So to understand why option prices decrease over time, let's use a simple insurance example. So let's say I can pay $10 in premium for a 30-day insurance policy against damages to my bike. Now, let's also say that there's a 5-day contract available that's worth $2 in premium for the same amount of coverage. So, the first thing you should notice is that the 5-day contract is worth $2 while the 30-day contract is worth $10. Now, that's just because there's a higher probability that I damage my bike in 30 days than in 5 days. So therefore, the higher probability associated with damages to my bike lead to a higher premium that I have to pay the insurance company. So if we reverse engineer that, I have to pay $10 for a 30-day policy, but only $2 for a 5-day policy. Now let's say hypothetically I bought that contract with 30 days to go, and I held it until there was 5 days left, and let's say I could sell that contract back to the insurance company for $2. So each day that passes, that contract gets less and less valuable because there's less time for me to damage my bike, and therefore there's a lower probability associated with those damages occurring. So the lower probability results in a cheaper insurance contract. So that's the same thing that's happening with options. With each passing day, there's a lower probability that the stock price makes some huge move that causes the option to be more valuable. So theta is just the option Greek that estimates how much the options price will decrease by with each day. So to build on everything you've learned thus far about theta, let's actually look at some examples of options that are decaying as their expiration dates approach. So in this example, we're looking at a call option with a strike price of 105. Now, as you know, a call option doesn't have any real value unless the stock price is above its strike price. So in this example here, the stock price is below the call strike price of 105 over the entire period. Now in the beginning of the period, we can see that the call option's price in the bottom half of the chart starts around $1.75. And that $1.75 is purely extrinsic. So as you know, at expiration, an option's price will only consist of its intrinsic value. So if this option right here, this $1.75 option, stays out of the money the entire time, this option will lose that $1.75 in value. And as we can see here, since the stock price is below the strike price the entire period, the option loses all of its value and expires worthless at expiration. Now in this example, we're looking at a put option with a strike price of $230. Now in the beginning of this period, we can see that the stock price was above the put strike price, and the options price consisted of all extrinsic value. And if you look, you can kind of see the options price losing value steadily over that period of time where the stock price was above the put strike price. However, the stock price fell and the put actually did have intrinsic value at the time of its expiration. Now as you can see, as expiration got closer and closer, the options value shifted away from extrinsic value and only consisted of intrinsic value. So this just demonstrates how theta decay only works against an option's extrinsic value and not its intrinsic value. Alright, so let's keep moving forward. So which options have the most theta exposure? In other words, which options are exposed to the most decay from the passage of time? Well, an option's extrinsic value is actually a great indicator of how much theta decay that option is exposed to, because after all, what we just discussed was theta decay only works against an option's extrinsic value. So the more extrinsic value an option has, the more theta it is exposed to. So if we look at these options here, we're looking at a stock that is trading for $201. Now, let's say we're looking at the call option with a strike price of $150. So this call option is deep in the money. It has, $51 of intrinsic value and only 55 cents of extrinsic value. Now the theta on this call option is negative 0.03. Now if we look at the 201 call, that option is worth $5.36. Now 100% of that option's price is extrinsic value. So that option has $5.36 of extrinsic value. And as we can see here, the theta is twice as much as the in-the-money option at negative 0.06. Now if we go even further, let's look at the 215 call. Now that call is only trading for 27 cents. And again, all of that option's value is extrinsic. So with 27 cents of extrinsic value, the option's theta is negative 0.01. So of these three options, the option with the most theta is the one with the most extrinsic value. So let's run through a couple examples to demonstrate the relationship between an option's theta exposure and the amount of extrinsic value. So in this first example, we're looking at an in-the-money option. So we're looking at a call option with a strike price of $90. Now as we can see, the stock price starts around $100, trades down to $95, but then just kind of takes off after that and trades all the way up to $110. Now if you look at the bottom half of the graph, you'll notice that this 90 call option doesn't really have that much extrinsic value at all over the whole period. In fact, most of its value is intrinsic. So this just goes to show that, since this option has mostly intrinsic value and very little extrinsic value, this option doesn't suffer that much from theta decay. In this next example, we're going to look at the money options. So in this particular example, we're looking at a straddle. So a straddle consists of a call and put at the same exact strike price. So in this example, the strike price of the straddle is $105. And as we can see here, the stock price trades right around $105 over the entire period. Now if you look at the bottom half of the graph, you can see that most of the time, the straddle doesn't have that much intrinsic value at all. And in fact, at the beginning of the period, the straddle price was $10, which means since most of that is extrinsic, this straddle had $10 to lose. Now as we can see, as time passes and the stock price remains at the strike price of the straddle's price decayed from $10 all the way down to $4. So this just demonstrates that since all of this position's value is extrinsic and the stock price traded on top of the strike price the entire time, this position is going to suffer greatly from time decay because it doesn't really have any real value. And by real value, I mean intrinsic value. So as long as an option has extrinsic value, as its expiration date approaches, the option prices will decrease. So in this final example, we're looking at one last position that consists of all extrinsic value. So this position is a strangle. Now a strangle consists of an out-of-the-money call and an out-of-the-money put. So in this case, the strangle strikes are 95 and 115. And as we can see here, the stock price was pinned at 105 the entire time. So as a result, as the expiration date of those options is approached, those options are going to lose value because there's less time for those options to become valuable through a large stock price movement. So the final piece to this theta decay puzzle is that not all options decay at the same rate. So all else being equal, as expiration approaches, at the money option decay grows larger and the decay of in the money or out of the money options actually decreases. So we actually ran two different studies to prove this to you, which we'll get into right now. So to show you how at-the-money theta decay changes as expiration approaches, we ran a study from January 2007 to late 2016. So here's what we did. On the first trading day of each month, we selected the expiration cycle with nearly 75 days to expiration. Now on each trading day, we tracked the price of the at-the-money straddle and compared the price to the straddle's price on the first day. So at the end here, we averaged the percentage of the straddle's remaining price that remained on each day across all 118 occurrences. So for example, let's say with 75 days to go, the straddle's initial price was $10. Now let's say with 65 days to go, the straddle's price was $9. That would be marked as 90% of the straddle's price remaining, since 9 out of $10 remained. Now, we did that 118 times, and we averaged all of the remaining percentages across each day to expiration. So 65 days to expiration, 64 days to expiration, etc. So we did that, and we came up with a at-the-money decay curve. Now, this is from real data. So let's see what we found. So here is the actual at-the-money decay curve that we came up with from real data using SPY options over the past 10 years. Now, as we can see here, it's very clear that the at-the-money option prices really start to decay in those final 5 to 7 days before expiration. So if you look all the way out at 70 days to expiration to 50 days, the decay is really not that quick. However, in the final week before expiration, that's when at-the-money options lose most of their value. So in fact, the last 25% of the at-the-money option prices comes out in the final 5 to 7 days. Now that's extremely important because if you're trading at-the-money options, especially if you're buying at-the-money options, you need to know that in those last 7 days before expiration, that's when you face the greatest potential losses from time decay. Now let's move on to out-of-the-money theta decay. So we ran a very similar test over the same time period, except we had to make a couple changes because now we're testing out-of-the-money option decay. So on the first trading day of each month from January 2007 to late 2016, we selected the expiration cycle with nearly 75 days to expiration. Now on that first day, we recorded the distance of the 10 delta call and the 10 delta put from the current stock price. On each subsequent day, we checked the call and put prices that were the same distance away from the stock as the 10 delta options on the first day. So, for example, if on the first day the stock price was $200 and the 10 delta call was 10 points above the stock price and the 10 delta put was 10 points below the stock price, on each subsequent day, we checked the call option that was 10 points above the stock price and we checked the put price that was 10 points below the stock price. And in the last step, we just averaged the percentage of remaining option values on each trading day across all of the 118 occurrences. So let's see what happened. So this is the out-of-the-money decay curve that we came up with from real data over the past 10 years. So as we can see here, we have a very different visual from the at-the-money decay curve. If you recall, the at-the-money option decay really started to speed up in those final 5 to 7 days before expiration. In this case, we're noticing that the decay actually is pretty steep from 70 to 50 days and even 50 to 30 days, But in those last 30 days to expiration, the option decay actually begins to slow down a little bit. Now, first of all, that's because out of the money options get cheaper and cheaper as expiration approaches, and therefore there's less value for them to lose in general. But also, there's always a chance that a stock could make a huge upside or downside move, and for that reason, out of the money options aren't just going to go to zero just because expiration's coming up. So, out of the money option prices will still hold on to some of their value going into expiration because there's always a chance that the stock price can make a outside move to the upside or downside. Well, congratulations. You just learned the most important concepts that you need to know about an options theta. So let's go ahead and recap everything that you've learned in this video. So first, an options theta represents how much the options price is expected to decrease by with the passing of 1 day. Now, theta decay only works against an option's extrinsic value. If an option's value is 100% intrinsic, its price will not decay at all. However, options that have 100% of extrinsic value stand to lose everything from time decay. Now, when options are more expensive, everything else being equal, that means that implied volatility is higher. And in higher implied volatility environments, all options are more exposed to theta decay since they have more extrinsic value relative to low implied volatility environments. Now, the options with the most exposure to theta decay are at the money options since they are the most expensive options that consist of 100% extrinsic value. Now, as expiration gets closer, at the money option decay speeds up significantly, with the steepest decay occurring in the final 5 to 7 days. Now, that's based on the research that we just did. Now, lastly, out of the money option decay tends to slow down as expiration gets closer, and as we discussed, that's because, first of all, out of the money options are cheap in general, so there's not much left for them to lose, but also there's always a chance that the stock price could make some huge move to the upside or downside, and for that reason, out of the money options will still hold on to some of their value going into expiration. Thank you so much for watching, everybody. At this point, I hope you feel like you are very comfortable with theta decay, and if not, if you have any questions, feel free to reach out to me. I'd be more than happy to help. If you enjoyed this video, please go ahead and subscribe to our YouTube channel so that you can receive all of our new videos as we come out with them.